But we are going to start with this ongoing situation at Yorkshire County Cricket Club, and their chairman, Roger Hutton, has this morning resigned in the wake of the Azeem Rafiq racism allegations. He apologised unreservedly and said the club should have recognised at the time the serious allegations. Let's now cross live to Geraint Hughes at Headingley, who brought us the news just an hour ago. Geraint, what has Hutton been saying about his reasons for stepping down?
Yes, it's quite a detailed statement considering it's just only over a page long. He's packed a lot in there. I think let's get to the crux of things. First things first is an apology from Roger Hutton, the former now chairman of Yorkshire County Cricket Club, to Azeem Rafiq. What he goes on to say in his statement is that he would like to take the opportunity to apologise unreservedly to Azeem. He goes on to say there has been a constant unwillingness from the executive members of the board and senior management at the club to apologise and to accept there was racism and to look forward. He goes on to say, I want to be clear that when I was made aware of Azeem Rafiq's allegations, I immediately reached out to the ECB to ask for their help and intervention to support a robust inquiry. He goes on to say, I was saddened when they declined to help, as I felt it was a matter of great importance for the game as a whole. It is a matter of record that I have continually expressed my frustration at the ECB's reluctance to act. And he concludes by saying, like the rest of us, I imagine the members of Yorkshire County Cricket Club will be questioning why the board is still in place. So a strong statement there from Roger Hutton, obviously apologising first and foremost to Azeem Rafiq, but also as well questioning other members of the board on Yorkshire County Cricket Club. Will they follow his lead today? And also as well questioning the ECB, having said that he'd reached out for help with the ECB, feeling it came rather slowly. We, of course, have heard, or will be hearing, of course, from Tom Harrison, the chief executive of the ECB, who came out with a very, very strong statement, and not just suggesting, along with the political pressure and the sponsor pressure upon Yorkshire, that that head should roll here at Headingley.
And Geraint, you're saying that about that quote, the heads should roll. Are we expecting more resignations from now on?
Well, I think we've gone from suggestions of resignations to expectations of resignation, with Roger Hutton, the chairman, potentially being the first. There's significant pressure. First of all, Azeem Rafiq himself, the player who is at the centre of this huge story, he has tweeted in relation to Roger Hutton's resignation this morning. What he says, there's been a constant unwillingness from the executive members of the board and senior management of the club to apologise and to look forward. And he singles out in his message this morning two people in particular, the chief executive, Mark Arthur, and the club's director of cricket, Martin Moxham. And essentially that Azeem Rafiq is calling upon those two in particular to resign, in addition to, as we well know now, that Roger Hutton, the chairman, has stepped aside. In addition, there is pressure from elsewhere as well. Sponsorship sponsors have been, a slew of sponsors have withdrawn their financial support to Yorkshire County Cricket Club over the last 48 to 72 hours as well. And there is significant political pressure as well. A number of MPs from Leeds, but also senior ministers within Cabinet have become embroiled in this story as well. And the chair of the DCMS Select Committee, Julian Knight, his office sent me a statement last night in relation to the ECB coming out and speaking last night and urging more change here at Yorkshire. That again, Julian Knight suggesting that why all members of the board are still in place was something that was befuddling him as well. So significant pressure, not just from Azeem Rafiq, but from many other places as well.
Now, many thanks. Oh, sorry, Geraint, go on, please go on.
Yeah, sorry, Pete. What I was also going to say as well, the whole story has really developed over the last few days with a leaked report, this redacted report, which there have been unredacted reports. One of the journalists at the centre of this was ESPN Cricinfo's George Debelle, who we've spoken to this morning as well. I think it's really interesting to hear from George about his interpretation as well about why Roger Hutton has resigned. He's only been at the club just over 18 months, and there is a feeling as well is that Hutton was very much a reforming character at the club and maybe potentially an ally of Azeem Rafiq as well. It'd be good to hear from what George Debelle has got to say about this now.
Several non-executive directors are going to resign or have resigned already, but the key thing is, and Roger Hutton is saying in his farewell statement, that the executive directors have got to go. They have been holding him back. He realised a few weeks ago that he had to sack much of the coaching staff and much of the senior executive. And he couldn't do that because he didn't have the support of the people who hold the purse strings at the club. And that basically is Colin Graves. Now, I believe that Colin Graves, the former ECB chair, wants to come back in as Yorkshire chair today. It is imperative that he is resisted. His remit is to save the current coaching staff and current executive management. And they, I think, are the problem. So Roger Hutton has called for Mark Arthur and Martin Moxon to resign today in his statement. And I think if Yorkshire are really going to put this episode behind them and rebuild and have the great future we all want them to have, those guys have to go.
So George Debelle there. Just to bring you some news that's come out of Headingley in the last few moments as well. Confirmation from Yorkshire County Cricket Club, actually confirmation of news that we brought you over an hour ago, that Roger Hutton has resigned as the chairman of the club. But Yorkshire County Cricket Club now confirm that Hutton has resigned from his role. Also as well, confirmation that the emergency board meeting is going to continue today, despite the resignation of Roger Hutton, that the board is due to meet today, and they will issue a further statement later in the day. They also go on to thank Roger Hutton for his work during his time as chair, albeit a short time in charge here at Headingley.
OK, Gary, and of course this story moving all the time. Thank you for keeping us right up to date.
So Hutton was very critical of the ECB in his statement, and after taking unprecedented action by banning Yorkshire from hosting international matches, ECB Chief Executive Tom Harrison told us yesterday on Sky Sports News why the ECB has taken the action it has.
When something becomes an issue of disrepute across the sport and has the kind of impact that we've been seeing across the sports spectrum and wider, actually, when your sport is on the front page of newspapers for all the wrong reasons, it's obviously it's obviously contingent on the governing body to take supplementary action to protect the sport and send a message to cricket fans around what the ECB stands for and its response to issues around racism.
The question I'm going to ask, is it true that the action has only followed now that sponsors and commercial partners have walked away from the partnerships with Yorkshire?
No, I don't think that's the case. I think this is, we would obviously had launched a regulatory process as our role as regulator of the sport some time ago into launching an investigation. But when something becomes an issue of disrepute across the sport and has the kind of impact that we've been seeing across the sports spectrum and wider, actually, when your sport is on the front page of newspapers for all the wrong reasons, it's obviously it's obviously contingent on the governing body to take supplementary action to protect the sport and send a message to cricket fans around what the ECB stands for.
Well, one of England's greatest captains, Michael Vaughan, has revealed he has been named in the report, but he denies any accusation of racism. Writing in his column for the Telegraph, Vaughan reveals he was asked in December 2020 to speak to the independent panel. He says he has no idea why they wanted to talk to him and was stunned when he was hit with the details the night before he was due to give evidence. Well, Vaughan said this, that Rafiq was alleging that in 2009, when I was still a player and before a Yorkshire match against Nottinghamshire, I had said to Rafiq and two other Asian players as we walked onto the field together that there are too many of you lot, we need to do something about it. This hit me very hard. It was like being struck over the head with a brick. I've been involved in cricket for 30 years and never once been accused of any remotely similar incident or disciplinary offence as a player or commentator. That the allegation came completely out of the blue and more than a decade after it was alleged to have happened made it all the more difficult to process. I completely and categorically deny that I ever said those words.